So as we've talked about through the last couple series of video, we had a subject which is being grounded, rooted in love, and then we had the object of growing the roots, and then now we are into the essence and nature of God through the attributes. The last video should have been a complete extrapolation on the divine nature and divine power, which is the first two subjects of love, which is nature, of patience, which is essence and a disposition and character of an individual, and then the active force of what we do when we're walking in love, which is being not just kind, but being employably useful in our actions towards others, in our words and our deeds. So the first two things specifically have to do with His nature and His power. The next 8 things in 1 Corinthians 13 all has to do with flesh. The first one is love does not envy. I think that might be what it's in the King James Version. The word literally in Greek means to boil up. When we boil up over something and we cause it to be a source of contention in our lives, this is of a fleshly nature. We've all boiled up on certain things, like people driving a car, where people just don't follow the rules the way that the driver perceives the other drivers to perform in what should be a logical progression. What they are doing is they're focusing on something that they have no control over, which is causing that blowing up, which could be anything. It could be the way that our Congress is more worried about getting reelected than doing that which is good and profitable for our country. People boil up over that. There's all sorts of things. Allowing people to break the law and not hold them accountable, and then holding other people accountable to things that have caused no harm to others. So there's an imbalance that causes a boiling up, a perceived unfairness that causes a boiling up, and a lack of direction and character that causes boiling up. There's all sorts of accountability issues with that one thing of flesh, of people need to do this. The next two things of the fleshly nature is to boast or brag. When an individual is in the flesh and suffers from a self-esteem problem, or they suffer from being in a position without power or authority, we all have a tendency to try to elevate ourselves with our words and the things that we've done in our past to show or convince others that we would be the correct person for that position. Love does not puff up or inflate. This could be about an individual inflating himself. They could be an individual inflating a subject or an object or food or a TV show or anything. When we're in the truth, we just are in the truth. We explain things in a way that can be received and is understood as something that is relevant to that particular subject, instead of trying to make it more than what it is, puffing it up. Love does not act rudely or unbecoming. In my case, I acted rudely and unbecoming because it was a way that I communicated. It was fun to be kind of obnoxious in a happy-go-lucky way, and then but can immediately turn to rudeness. So being rude and being unbecoming is not of Him. As we go forward, and we're supposed to be expecting fairness towards us, but if we reciprocate our understanding to the point where we ridicule an individual because of his lack of understanding, or we are attacking somebody because they put their trust in the wrong thing, then we could be damaging in our witness and our testimony of how we treat others by being rude or unbecoming. The next thing that's the root of all of the fleshly things is to be self-seeking. When we seek ourselves without understanding scriptures, in the Old Testament it says the heart is desperately wicked. Meaning that without Him, what we put into our heart is things that are selfish, self-promoting, self-serving, the things that please us. When we start receiving of His Spirit, we learn to be selfless. We look for the benefit and the profit of our brother. We try to be helpful and encouraging with words and deeds that encourage somebody to turn away from a self-destructive or self-serving mode that leads to nowhere and is not fulfilling in their lives towards a direction that brings joy and fulfillment. So self-seeking is probably the root of all the fleshly things, where we start out with it's all about me and then work from there. The next one of becoming easily irritated or provoked. When an individual is like I used to be a control freak, it had to be my way. And if it didn't become my way, what I would do is I would become overtly aggressive to the point where it was a reaction of immediate irritation. And this would establish a standard between me and the people that I'm dealing with, so that because I would be irrational, they wouldn't want me to be irrational, so I'd become easily irritated and provoked. Or that you fall into the trap of when you run across something that you feel personally that should be a particular way, it immediately provokes you into revealing some kind of irritation. The next two are pretty childish in nature. Taking inventory of wrongdoing. When we get older, speaking of myself, I was literally able to justify my recollection of the things that somebody's done to further along and justify what is a reason for doing things. Because they did all these things, then that's why I can do this as a response to what they've done. So taking inventory of wrongdoing is not a profitable thing for us, because when we do that, we are going to be judged with the measure that we judge others. So that is not an option for a believer. When you walk in love, you have no option of keeping inventory of wrongdoing, which is different than a track record. You're not seeking out a reason to justify being against somebody or whatever, but when you recognize that this person has, as a pattern, produced certain types of fruit without repentance and without spiritual power, they're going to continue on with that thing. It's not that we should hold it against them, but there's also a balance there where when you come to people that are consistent in their nature, that you point this out to them and you don't necessarily use it against them. The last thing of the flesh is rejoicing over injustice. I like to use Bush as an example. Every time Bush did something wrong, there was a whole segment of our community that rejoiced over any error that he made. And currently, there's a whole section of our community that rejoices over the errors that Obama makes right now. So that is not of God, creates a lot of contention, a lot of confusion, and right now the last thing this country needs is to be further divided. The most divided probably we've been in history right now. This is why this is so important. All these things of the flesh are a manifestation of us turning away from selfless acts to turning towards selfishness, which was really started becoming prominent in the 80s, where it's all about me and the right that I have to do whatever I want. And that's just not a constitutional issue. The constitutional issue is, or should be, manifest upon, I have no right to impose my wickedness upon another. But now we do have the right to impose our wickedness upon another. And that's because this always comes about because of lack of virtue. Nobody can hold anybody accountable when they're committing the same offense. So that is the 8 things of the flesh that are contrary to the Spirit, that help us to identify the things that are love and are not love, and that's why they're next in the session. There we go.